Climate change. Pandemics. War. When Earth became uninhabitable, the ruling elite fled to stay in the distant Kepler system. It is with these words, the story begins. Viewers are introduced to a girl named Louise Blake, a young and brave astronaut born in a distant space colony in the Kepler system. Long ago her parents abandoned their home planet, which had become unfit for full life. Deadly epidemics and large-scale man-made disasters destroyed human and natural resources, and the surviving Earthlings were forced to look for a new haven. Many years later, a young astronaut was sent to Earth as part of a research expedition to gain information about the Earth's environment. But upon landing, the ship crashed and she was the only survivor. Now the mission of responsibility lay entirely on one member of the crew. The alien who arrived began to look around, reporting everything she saw to the ship's captain, named Tucker. They examine large bugs, jellyfish, and other organisms that have suffered mutations after large radiation outbreaks. Due to the increased humidity, the planet fills with thick fog and visibility is severely reduced. The captain uses a rocket launcher so Blake can get to the rocket faster, but the man finds himself trapped by the Earthlings. The girl hurries to quickly help the captain, but fails and also gets trapped by the inhabitants of Earth. The crew is placed in a sewage tank filled with water. Later, the girl is given the opportunity to go ashore and help a local resident. Louise encounters a small settlement of people living in dangerous conditions, takes the necessary medical equipment and helps the local resident. Tucker's health deteriorates badly, as the man has lost a lot of blood. He decides to commit suicide to avoid taking time away from Louise. All his life, the astronaut has been told that research is done for the good of all the inhabitants of Kepler. This forces the girl to calm down a bit and accept that there is a lot of time to be spent on research. Not having time to think through the actions, the sewer tank abruptly fills with water. Weather disasters and radiation have caused constant flooding on Earth. A desire to escape and explore the planet in the interests of new generations gives the girl the motivation to climb up to the lid of the tank, where she is helped to get out by a local resident. Earth has always been the perfect planet for life, filled with sun, air and water. But humans didn't appreciate the beautiful conditions, completely looted and killed everything they had. A girl and her father tried to grow trees in a laboratory and study new species of Earth plants. The man's crew left several signaling systems on Earth, one of which was found. Then the crew had to check the signals and send specialists to investigate. Before leaving, the man promised his young daughter that if the results were good, Louise would be sent for research. We return to present events. The flood is gone, and the Earth becomes calm. Louise is returned to a huge tank, mocked and poured out of the water. Apparently, the explorers on Earth are not welcome at all. The astronaut asks a passing girl to get a red suitcase. But the alien language is completely unknown to Earth residents. Louise draws pictures on the walls, explaining where she came from and what she was doing on Earth. She explains that no more children are born on Kepler. The human reproductive system has been reduced to almost zero, due to poor living conditions. The alien inhabitants could now have children, only a few times in a generation. This information led the little girl to comply with Louise's request, and go in search of the red suitcase. Perhaps at this point Blake could have prevailed, and reported the information she found to Kepler, but the girl did not get the biometer. Instead, several other girls and a small child were lowered into the huge tank. The sounds coming from Earth, filled with nightmare and screaming, the planet filled with fire and violent fighting between the inhabitants. The ships were enriched with stolen goods, and the protesting inhabitants were beaten and brutally murdered. After a while, the girls were released to Earth, and Blake decided to take a little look around. The planet is filled with murdered inhabitants and wrecked watercraft. At this time, Narvik takes a gun and some items from the alien ship. Now, Louise is left without a signal and pursues the girl to retrieve the biometer. Thirst takes over, and the astronaut drinks water from a small stream. The girls hear unexplained screams again and climb to a small height to reconnoiter the situation. They spot a large vessel heading toward the shore. Louise retrieves her belongings and gun to stay alive and unharmed. From the violent impact, Narvik faints, and the astronaut makes a signal shot to stop the ship. Once on the ship, the girl, disguised as a local resident, descends indoors. The ship arrives at the other shore and the residents are kicked out of the room. The survivors end up in the science station, where they are interrogated. Among the residents, they find an astronaut who came from Kepler. The girl meets a man, the head of the Earth dwellers, Mr. Gibson. He recognizes in Louise a little girl he met a long time ago on Kepler. The astronaut tells him that after the crash of the ship with the Earth dwellers, all the crew members died, and the signal with Kepler was destroyed. The only thing left was the biometer, a device for measuring biochemical changes. The equipment was taken by Earthlings, so Louise asks for it back, and to continue studying Earth processes. But the man is upset with Blake with some news. The cruise ship is completely destroyed, and it is impossible to contact Kepler. The second shocking news is the death of Louise's father. They tried to open a communication window to contact Kepler. Then the humans became very angry and destroyed the ship, along with all the equipment to communicate with the research center. It was a strange reaction, since they were helping the Earthlings a lot. The humans provoked a great protest and revolt, sharpening against all events. The head of the mission died, along with Louise's father. The man's adopted son gives the astronaut a homemade airplane, and calls it the magic ship. Gibson learns that due to unfavorable conditions, the citizens of Kepler cannot have children. Mr. Gibson proposes to make the girl's father's plan a reality. But the constant tides, shifting land and poor conditions make it difficult to move peoples. The inhabitants began to defend the dam so that the tides would be much lower. The girl's father devised a plan that described a mission to build turbines to make hydroelectric power plants. Now hydroelectric power can fully provide electricity to all the Earth's inhabitants. Gibson leaves the girl alone, where Louise is struck by a panic attack. The girl lies motionless on the bed, but recalls old moments with her dead father. She takes a cold shower and puts on clean clothes to calm down a bit. Louise is invited into the school classroom, where the children ask questions about Kepler. They greatly upset the astronaut, as she recalls her home. Later, she returns to Mr. Gibson's office and notices his son, with whom the man is studying separately. The boy shows a small plant, a tree, and tells Louise that they used to grow everywhere and produce oxygen. He confesses that he learns the information from Christopher Columbus, with whom he communicates through a ship's pipe. Christopher Columbus turns out to be the girl's father. Louise sets out to find the man, making her way into the deep corridors of the ship, where the girl is met by Mr. Gibson. The man apologizes for lying, explaining that it was not the locals who staged the protests, but Mrs. Blake's father. He has fallen madly in love with a local resident, completely forgetting which side he is on. The girl intends to open the door and talk to her father. Christopher recognizes the young daughter, and hugs Louise tightly. The man apologizes for the betrayal and the enormous deception of the people of Kepler. It turns out that Christopher wanted to stop the great migration of the inhabitants back to Earth, because in so many years, it has managed to become alien and lifeless. Louise does not accept the news and runs away, leaving her father in his newly locked room. Christopher has ruined everything they have worked for and proved, and the girl intends to right his wrongs. The body's reproductive system has begun to recover, and give positive results. Now, the astronaut's main goal is to transmit a signal through the weather station. Mr. Gibson's family is having dinner with an astronaut girl. Gibson's wife tells him that the man saved her and her son's lives. The baby was born in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by an umbilical cord around his neck. It is likely that if Gibson had not helped cut the umbilical cord and pulled his young son out, lives would have been lost. The family's dramatic story is interrupted by a power outage. It turns out that someone among the residents got through security and turned off the power plants. Gibson asks the family and Louise to stay in their quarters until the ship is safe enough, but the girl doesn't listen. On her way to the lower floors of the ship, the astronaut is greeted by a disturbed Narvik, who is looking for her young daughter. Louise has no choice but to take the woman to the girls' quarters. On the way to the cabins, the girls are met by guards and lock Narvik in the cabin with the other girls. The astronaut's wounds are treated by Gibson's wife, ignoring questions about the girl's need for quarters. Mr. Gibson returns to Louise's room. We now realize that the plan to save new generations is the cabin with the little girls. It can take decades for the girls from Kepler to arrive, so the Earthlings plan to keep the girls until their reproductive age. The average life expectancy on Kepler is 40 to 50 years, so the girls will have time to grow up before Earth is settled. Narvik is about to be executed the next day, and Louise's opinion cannot change the decision. The girl takes Mila, Narvik's daughter, from her quarters and hides her in a small closet in her room. After the girl goes missing, Gibson sends a guard to follow Louise and find out where she has hidden Mila. The guard tracks the room, but does not find the little girl. In turn, he inquires about events on Kepler and life without children. Afterward, the guard tries to abuse the woman to get a new baby. Little Mila is greatly frightened by what she sees, and begins to cry, which gives away her presence. But Louise quickly turns her attention to herself, and makes her forget about the little girl. In a matter of moments, the girl blocked the air with the man's tie and sent him to the corner of the room. Armed, Louise decides to lead Mila out into the common quarters, access to which is guarded. The girl quickly distracts the guard, whereupon Mrs. Blake smashes his head in with a machine gun. Mila's family is recovered, but the death penalty problem is not solved, so Louise lets all the residents go free. The astronaut returns to Christopher and frees him. The inhabitants get out of the ship and try to get to the signal station. It turns out that Gibson's words were a lie, for there is evidence of breeding on planet Earth. The girl notices a toy that was with the biometer, which confirms Gibson's false words. Louise is going to prove the possibility of humans being born on Earth, and transmit a signal, but she will need the biometer to do so. Blake accompanies the girls to leave the ship. Now, they are free, and will not be subject to fertilization. The girls and children swim over to another ship to reach the shore. In turn, Louise notices the signal shot and swims to the biometric facility. On the spot, it turns out that Gibson's adopted son is Louise's brother. This news shocks the girl and forces her to put the gun away. Gibson sends a signal to Kepler from biometer about the complete relocation of the inhabitants to Earth. After finishing her message, the girl lunges at Gibson and then strangles him at the bottom of the ocean. Louise regains consciousness already on the ship. Narvik saved her life, just as the astronaut helped her earlier. After looking around, the girl realizes that she is on a ship with Earthlings led by Christopher. Louise comforts her brother and gives him the last match that Christopher gave her. The story does not end until the end, for we do not learn about the migration of peoples. It is probably possible to hypothesize that life on Earth continued to recover and rebuild. We can only see the ship with the local inhabitants sailing into a beautiful future for new generations.